Loud. Hello, everyone. No. I'm Brother Doug. I'm with my mom's sister Sharon, our brother Dennis, our sister Marissa, and we are doing a study today about the Passover, the Pesach. Our Pesach started last night at sunset. It is ending today. Roughly, if you're at Eastern Standard Time like us, you got about maybe, what, say 2.5 hours maybe
Mm-hmm.
left of the Pesach. So all right, so we're going to start off. I think the perfect place to start off would be the original account, Exodus 12. So we'll start off with that. And mind you, this all points to Yahusha. So if we have any Christians that might be just joining in, just viewing this, and just wanted to be interested, if you might not be aware of this, any Christians that are listening, Paul, the apostle, says that all these shadows, okay, all these shadows point to the Messiah. They point to Yahusha. They point to Yahuwah. Okay, so this is important. And you might have been taught that you're only supposed to focus on reading stuff about Messiah and red lettering. If you understand the basic understanding, right, John 1:1, the word was Yahuwah. The word is Yahusha. The word is Yahuwah. Okay? The word is the creator, meaning the Messiah is everywhere, all over the word, not just the New Testament. So you might have been under that weird type of, I know that a lot of preachers preach that nonsense that you got to focus only on the New Testament, only on the good news accounts. No. What you have to understand, and to quote Chuck Missler here, the New Testament was basically, if I'm trying to not butcher this quote he gave, but the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Or I should say that it's concealed in the Old Testament. Messiah was concealed in the Old Testament, revealed in the New
Mm-hmm.
Testament. What does that mean? It means he was always there. You just
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize it. He was always there. And I'll show you even with the Targums as we read Exodus 12, and I'll give you the Targum version. You'll see that way before Messiah even came to earth, they knew that the word of Yahuwah was this coming Savior, was the Father himself actually protecting Israel, always being Israel's protector. Now, when Israel would sin, Israel became his enemy in a righteous way because now Israel's being apostate, Yahuwah would punish them righteously and vice versa. So anyway, so Exodus 12, and Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, "This month shall be to you the beginning of months. It is the first to you among the months of the year." And why is this important, guys? Because this tells us that this is when our new year starts. Forget January, screw January, okay? That didn't start until the Gregorian calendar, okay? And technically, if, let's see here, maybe it started in the Julian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, so I forget if it's I forget if it's the Gregorian Pope or
I
the
think it was Gregory. Yeah.
Gregory. Okay. Okay. So anyway, but you'll see that most of your Bibles, by the way, if you have a study Bible, in the footnotes, it tells you the Hebrew year always started either somewhere in March or April every year. It was always in the spring. It was never in February. It was never in January. And just to kind of give you guys like a concept, right? Okay, so Ak is 8, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
original months, this is how it goes. Okay, so you got the first month of the year. So let's say April, right? April's 1, May's 2, June 3, okay? And then you got August is 4, right? And then you got September 5, or maybe no, September would actually be 7, I'm sorry, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
Sept,
right.
I'm sorry, I'm probably missing a couple months. So let me work it the correct way and backwards. So September 7, Ak 8, Nov 9, Dec December 10.
Mm-hmm.
January, it originally was called something else, was the 11th month. Okay. Then you had February, the 12th month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then if there was sometimes in the Hebraic calendar, you'll have a 13th month year or a 12-month year. If it was a 12-month year, New Year's in March. 13th month year, it would be in April. You see what I'm saying? So that's how it always was until Julian and Gregory came on the scene. That's how it always was. So Rome is what changed it. And I actually came across a video recently, anyone's interested. Yahusha's timepiece has always been that way. Okay, so the new year was always starting when stuff was budding, when stuff was growing and all this stuff. So when he's saying here, the beginning this month is the beginning of the months of the year. What is it saying? It's saying that this is the first of the new year. Okay, so this month they're in Egypt, which by the way, most people would have understood they were in Egypt in spring. Okay, they were in Egypt when grain was getting ripened. Okay, when you would be able to give a sheaf, right, at first fruits. Okay, so the grain already would have had to start ripening around that time. Okay, so anyway. All right, the Passover is instituted. Speak to all the congregation and children of Yahshua, saying, on the 10th of this month, let them take each a lamb according to the houses of their family, every man a lamb for his household. And if they be few in a household, so that there are not enough for the lamb, he shall take with himself his neighbor that lives near him, as to the number of souls, everyone according to which allows him to make a reckoning for the lamb. It shall be to you a lamb unblemished, a year old, and it shall be of the lambs. And it shall be kept by you till the 14th of this month. Again, this is why it proves that till the 14th of this month, evening to evening, okay? Because literally you're keeping it right at the 10th to the 14th, okay? So evening to evening. So basically the end of the 13th starts the 14th. So that's when you're eating the lamb that night. That night that follows, there's like a transition period. Okay, so towards evening, right before, not right before, but I would say somewhere between the end of the day, between the end of the afternoon and sunset, in that gap, that in between period, that's when you're killing the lamb. Okay, maybe a couple hours before sunset. Okay, because it says here, all the multitude of the congregation and children of Yashrael shall kill it toward evening. Not at sunset, toward it. And they shall take of the blood, and they shall put it on the two doorposts and the lintel in the houses, and whatsoever you shall eat them, and they shall eat it, flesh in the night, roasted with fire, and they shall eat unleavened bread with bitter herbs. You shall not eat it raw, nor salt in water, okay? But only, keyword only, and this is how we know, guys, we're going to read Deuteronomy 16 later. This is an important part of the verse here. Only roasted with fire. The head and the feet, appurtenances, nothing shall be left of it till the morning, and a bone of it you shall not break, but that which is left of it till morning you shall be burnt with fire. And thus shall you eat of it, your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, you shall eat it in haste. It is a Passover to Yahuwah, and I will go throughout the land of Egypt, and will smite every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and on all the mighty ones in Egypt I will execute vengeance. And again, this is like for a lot. I'm not trying to attack the Christians here, but if you're a Christian that honestly believes there's no other gods in existence, okay, like there's no lesser mighty ones, like little gods's, okay, he's talking about taking vengeance over something that exists, not an idol. He's talking about something that exists, like entities, okay? Because he says right here, I will execute vengeance on all the lowercase g on most English Bible, gods of the Egypt, okay? So basically, this is why it's so important, guys, to understand the divine counsel. It is so important to understand this concept in Deuteronomy 32, verse 8, okay? Yahuwah had his righteous messengers before they fell. He put them over the Gentiles. He had 70 messengers over the Gentiles. 70 countries, 70 messengers, okay? Malachim, angels, whatever you prefer to call them, okay? Righteous Malachim, okay? Because they fell later on, okay? But by this point, mind you, remember, the Tower of Babel was, what, thousands of years before this? So there's plenty of time for them to fall by this point, okay? They probably became fallen angels, okay? And that's who he's talking about. He's saying, I am going to execute vengeance on these so-called gods of the nations. Specifically here, so-called gods of Egypt, okay? Horus originally probably was a fallen Malachim. Set was originally a fallen Malachim. All of them are real beings. So it's important to understand that this whole teaching from the church that you guys have heard that your pastor has regurgitated from cemetery school and all this nonsense of they don't exist. No, they exist, trust me. That's why Yahuwah is putting vengeance on them. They
Mm-hmm.
exist. So, so yeah. Oh, I'll definitely, sis, I'll definitely calling you. Thank you very much. So basically, I just wanted to stop there at verse 12 just to kind of give you guys some context with that. We can't really focus on that point today because we got so much other scriptures to go through, but I recommend you guys read Deuteronomy 32:8, preferably in an LXX Septuagint. Read what other places, Brother Dennis, would be good. Psalms 82, maybe. Okay, you will die like men. Okay, all you are gods. You're sons of the Most High. Okay, this is like context here. So again, those principalities he put over the Gentiles that rejected him at the Tower of Babel. Now they're his enemies. Okay, hence why he says, "Don't have any other mighty ones before my
Mm-hmm.
face." Okay, there's other mighty ones, not equal to him. I want to make that very clear. Who is the supreme, true creator? So I'm not saying they're equal to him or that they're actual creators, but they are lesser deities that the nations actually worship. That's why in Psalms, right, it says all the gods of the nations are demons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So again, that's the context of that. So, and again, that shows you that the mighty ones themselves are not idols. Okay. The idols were made historically to represent that entity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let me give you guys a little history lesson here because I definitely for the Christians here because they might not know this. Genesis 6, right? I know you've been taught it's the sons of Seth and daughters of Cain and yada, yada, yada. No, it's not. Okay. Fallen angels came down, took on human bodies, according to the book of Jude, right? Took on physical human male bodies, slept with women physically, had giants through them, abominable titan giants, okay? Yahuwah sends the flood to protect his creation from being completely corrupted from that, okay, out of love, okay, regardless of what an atheist tells you, okay? Then, right, how are they going to worship those fallen angels anymore? Think about it. They can't. They're in Tartarus, right? Second Peter. They're in chains in Tartarus. How would they worship these giants in the fallen Malachim? They're not going to be able to do that. But if they do something that's evil and satanic and make a graven image that represents that entity, basically, guys, idols are a pagan idea of a mediator, right? Like an intercessor. It's almost like having their intercessor
Mm-hmm.
to their pagan god, okay? So the idol represents the god. The idol is the one that they communicate to these pagan gods with. That's the idea, okay? So if anyone ever tells you guys that, and this is for our brothers and sisters in Yahuwah and Yahusha, or even Christians listening, if anyone ever says, okay, oh well, those are just statues, they don't, those false gods don't exist. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Yahuwah would not be taking vengeance on something that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, because that's what he's doing here. So this day shall be to you a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to Yahuwah throughout all your generations. And you shall keep it a feast for a perpetual ordinance. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. From the first day you shall eat utterly removed. Now, this is important for all of us here, right? It says, from the first day you shall remove the leaven. A lot of people get confused about this. This is talking about the first day of unleavened bread, not the night of Passover. You're not removing leaven on Passover. I've made mistakes about this in the past and gotten all worried. It says from the first day of unleavened bread, you shall remove the leaven from your houses. So that for us, Sunset tonight, we got to make sure all 11 is out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's how it goes. Not saying that you can't remove it before then, but this is the deadline. This is the deadline, and this is when you're commanded to get everything out. So basically, you need to make sure between, the first and second day of unleavened bread that you got all leaven out. So, no, whoever shall eat leaven, that soul shall be utterly destroyed from Yasharal from the first day until the seventh day. Now, I want to make it clear too, we're not only supposed to worry about physical leaven, right? Yahusha said, beware the leaven of the Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
Pharisees have leaven, doctrine. Okay, this is the part of year, guys, where we need to be auditing our belief system, auditing our theology. Okay, and not try to poke fun at anyone, but since this kind of goes back into this type of topic, okay, if any one of you is believing in stuff like, I don't know, the Gospel of the Essenes, I don't know, the Book of Jubilees, oh, I don't know, stuff that directly contradicts the Bible. And I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm just saying this is a time to humble yourself before Yahuwah and remove stuff like that. And I'm not trying to say that, my stuff don't stink, okay? I'm not saying that. I don't want you guys taking it wrong. What I'm saying is these are just examples I'm giving you guys out of love that are obvious examples of false doctrine that we should not be holding on to. We should not be preaching or believing in religious veganism. We should not believe that Yahusha's only a man. Okay, we should not be, rejecting the virgin birth. We should not be rejecting Yahusha being the fullness of Yahuwah in human form. These are core doctrines. So again, and so I would say this is a time of year where we need to get spiritual leaven out, sin and doctrine. That is also part of the leaven that we need to get out. And Yahusha made it very clear to his disciples, you need to do that. You need to beware of what the Pharisees believe. Be aware of what the Sadducees believe. Okay, and that's why I say, and I know the knee jerk reaction from the church upbringing we've had is, oh, Yahuwah knows our hearts. I get it. He knows our hearts, but he also knows our hearts are desperately wicked. Okay, so we can't keep using that excuse. Okay, when we have the age of the internet is here, guys, we can't be ignorant anymore to what other heretical cultic sects teach, okay? Because it's very obvious out there, okay? I would say we should all be, and I include myself, all be looking at what we believe, whether it's, the Sabbath, the calendar. This is the time of year to really re-examine all of ourselves, okay? So I'm not just picking fun at people, okay? I'm saying all of us need to be doing that, okay? So that's the point, okay? So, and that's what Yahusha meant by spiritual leaven, the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So I think it's important to understand too that both had leaven. The Sadducees had leaven too. So when you hear people try to toss you to and fro with doctrine of the Zadokite calendar and the Zadokites, just remind them that the Sadducees were Zadokites. There was no perfect priesthood, okay? Let me just go to Paul real quick because I know a lot of people want to bring this up. And I talked to a well-meaning brother that I still consider a brother, and we can agree to disagree on things. But he had a brother in his fellowship try to teach him this weird Zadokite legend that somehow they were, that their stuff didn't stink, supposedly. That just because Yahuwah chose them in the days of Ezekiel, mind you, the days of Ezekiel are way before the Dead Sea Scrolls, mind you, okay? That supposedly that they were perfect priests that didn't mess up ever and that they got a perfect calendar. Okay, so I just want to make it very clear that even Paul will debunk this, okay? When you go to actually the differences between the Levitical and Melchizedek priesthood. So I just want to prove a point real quick here.
Now, Doug, when it says to cut off, it means to kill, right? Because a lot of people don't understand that phrase when it says if they do this, they shall be cut off, which
Oh
means
yeah.
they will be killed.
Yeah, the only reason we can't do that today is because we're not in the land. Yeah, you're 100% right. But the only reason we can't do it today, and the reason that we just cut people off as in fellowship, is because we're not in a Levitical priesthood, and we don't have a Torah keeping judicial system to be stoning people. So basically, sis, to add to your point, the cut off context would be like people actually getting stoned. So you can't, unfortunately, we're in a Babylon. We're not in the land of Israel. We are under, we are kind of like where Daniel was. Obviously, Daniel wasn't stoning people. Okay. So we're in a situation where, yes, it's 100% correct to say that that's what cut off meant. But also, I do think in the New Testament, Paul kind of talks about that. There is things like, there are spiritual applications to that. Because if you think about it, right, if you spiritually cut someone out of the assembly, right, they're no longer, and if you give them into Satan's hand, right, because I think Paul talks about that, right? If someone becomes a heretic and all that, you give them over to Satan for a time for destruction of the flesh. They're basically now being given over to the enemy, spiritually speaking. So it's almost like they are being cut off. Okay, so I would say it's not completely wrong to apply that in a Melchizedek priesthood as in cutting someone out from the assembly. But you are 100% correct that the original context of that in the Levitical priesthood was stoning someone. That's how they would get cut off from Israel. So it's important to understand the two different contexts. Today, all we can do is cut off relationship. We can't, it would not be right for us to go randomly stoning people in a land that's not our land, and we're not in a Levitical priesthood. So I just want to make that you know very clear. I'm not telling you to stone people, okay? We can't do that if we're in the land of America, not under a Levitical priesthood, not in a Torah keeping government. Okay, that would be wrong for us to do. Okay, so I want to make that very clear. Stoning was given under a certain priesthood, certain parameters, under a certain type of government. It was not. It was not to be kept everywhere you live. Okay, because if you had meant that, he would have said everywhere you live. He would have not. He made it very clear when he was giving those commands in Deuteronomy and all that. He even says, "When you enter the land I'm about to give you, do these things." So he even says it. Go ahead.
But brother, you know that in most Muslim countries, they still stone people to death.
Yeah, well, sis, they're a weird religion. The Islamics, they want to pick and choose what they want to follow. I would not use that. I know you're not trying to. I would not use them as a good example. They're they are under a different spirit, number one, and number two, they're doing stuff their own way. They don't care about the Torah. They say the Torah is corrupted, yet they're copying and pasting from the Torah. So, they're a whole nother ball of wax there. I would not use them as a good example. But yeah, I see what you're saying with that. Yeah. Yeah, the Muslims are actually a good example for us to see how we should not be doing that. Okay? That's the perfect example of why we should not be doing that, because then we just start stoning people just in general without even having a real Torah keeping government to put that to implement that in. And a lot of atheists will try to say, "Oh, we'll see how evil your creator wants you to stone children." First of all, they're not stoning little babies, okay? They're stoning grown children, okay? The only time you see that in scripture in the Torah, that son of theirs was being a drunkard. In Hebrew culture, you were not drinking at 16 years old, okay? So when it says our son is a drunkard and reviler, what are we supposed to do? And Moses says you stone him. It's not talking about stoning a 5-year-old. So, these atheists will bring up any type of ridiculous nonsense because they don't know context. Okay. So don't let them get you into that type of argument. Anyway, so all right, where did I leave off at? The vengeance on the mighty ones of Egypt. I think I'm at verse 14. Actually 15, I think it was at. Yeah. Verse 16. Okay, the seventh day shall be a set apart gathering. Okay, so the first day and the seventh day, right? Verse 16 here will be a set apart gathering. And And basically, like I said to my mom earlier today, anything that is to be done is lawful to be done work-wise, meaning you can't do employment work, you can't do servile work, but you can cook, you can clean if need be when you're making what you need to make that day on the first and the seventh day of the feast. Okay. You shall keep this command, for on this day I will bring out your force. And a lot of people that want to eat the lamb on the 15th, I want you to pay attention to this. This proves you're not supposed to eat the lamb on the 15th, okay? Verse 17, and you shall keep this commandment, for on this day, meaning the 15th, I will bring your force out of the land of Egypt. They were already out of Egypt on the 15th. They were not eating the lamb on the 15th. So when it talks about the night to be muchly observed, that's the 14th. A lot of people get mistaught in this movement. Why? Because unfortunately, there's a lot of Jewishness in the Hebrew roots movement. There's a lot of Masoretic and rabbinical interpretations and eisegetical interpretations. And you can't, first of all, and we'll go into the New Testament later and prove to you that you can't use the New Testament to get the idea that the Passover is the 15th. I'm sorry, but you can't interpret the Old Testament with New Testament lenses. You got to interpret the New Testament from the Old Testament. So that's number one, what you got to keep in mind. Okay, so this day that you go out, they ate the lamb the previous evening. Okay, so that means they're going out of Egypt, leaving Egypt on the 15th. Okay, beginning the 14th day of the first month, you shall eat unleavened bread from evening till the 21st day of the month, till evening. So this is how you get 7 days. Even though the Feast of Unleavened Bread, if you want to be technical, originally was only 6 days because it was the 15th to the 21st as one feast, and the Passover was a separate feast. Even though they're two separate feasts, he's commanding you here for the whole 7 days to eat unleavened bread. So I don't want you getting confused here. Traditionally, we'll see later in the New Testament accounts, the traditional view by the rabbis was that the whole week was going to be called Passover now. So basically, Yahuwah never considered it one feast.
Right.
He considered the Passover night as one feast, and the 15th to the 21st as a second feast.
Right.
What happened, Mom, was the rabbis were like, screw that. We're going to call it all Passover.
Yeah.
Again, adding to the word, changing Yahuwah's word. This is what you have to understand about rabbinical Judaism and Phariseeism, okay? They were very big on the oral traditions. They were very big on man-made traditions. So even when you look in the New Testament where it says the Passover of the Jews, understand that that's a separate Passover. That's the Passover the Pharisees were keeping. Yahushua and his disciples kept the Passover the prior night at the Last Supper. So we're going to talk about all that and go to those scriptures later on. But I just want to kind of set a foundation here so it will help you guys understand this culturally, historically, and all that. Okay. 7 days leaven shall not be found in your houses. Whosoever shall eat anything unleavened, that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Yashrael, both among the occupiers of the land and the original inhabitants. You shall eat nothing leavened, but you shall eat unleavened bread. So nothing leavened must be ate. This is important here. And I just want to focus on this very quickly. Okay, guys. Baking soda of itself is not leaven. Okay? What's another thing? Water of itself is not leaven. So you couldn't remove water from your houses anyway in modern day technology. You got water in your irrigation system, so that would be ridiculous. But yeast packets of itself is not leaven. If you don't use them and they're in the packet and they're in your cupboard, that's not leaven. Okay, let me explain to you something. In agriculture, I'm pretty sure Brother Dennis, because I know he's had brothers and sisters that have been on farms, he'll understand what I'm about to say here. Zachary Bauer actually does a great video about this, by the way. Okay, real biblical leaven, what they consider leaven and not eating anything leavened meant, okay, you had a sourdough starter, okay? They would actually have a sourdough starter all year round where this sourdough starter would help you make leavened bread. Okay, it actually was activated yeast. It was already activated. It already had the water and the yeast and all already activated with dough. Okay? That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about, getting rid of all your yeast packets that you bought from the store or baking soda. That would be ridiculous. It's not leaven. It hasn't been activated. It's not even leaven. And furthermore, think about this for a second. Yahusha drank wine.
Mhm.
He drank wine on the night of the Passover. So you're telling me what? They're going to finish a bottle of wine in one night? I mean, that's the only way for you to interpret it, that it just means anything, any type of yeast in your home to get rid of. You would have to think then that Yahusha, and his disciples drank a whole bottle of wine in one night and got drunk.
So,
I
brother, does
mean,
pasta and potato chips is considered yeast?
pasta,
Pasta,
no.
no.
Pasta's never leavened at all. They're pasta, they don't use they don't, as far as I remember, they don't use any yeast to make pasta from what I remember. The only ingredients you could look on the box, it'll say durum wheat, I think is the main ingredient.
Yeah, pasta's not a problem, but potato chips are.
Potato chips, yes.
And the
That's
only
it.
kind of crackers we looked into this, you can have Triscuits.
Yeah.
Triscuits are not leavened,
So
but
for pasta to be leavened, sis, just to break it down for you here, you would have to look on the ingredients. It would have to say either leavening. Yeast would have to be an ingredient with water. Okay, the only way you can get something leavened is you have to have it activated. The yeast has to be with water or yeast with sugar. If there's not that in a grain, the grain's not leavened then. From what I understand, pasta can never be leavened because they'll never add leavening to pasta. They never do it. Like I'll read you right here, the Ronzoni. Durum wheat.
Made with flour, though. Pasta's made with flour, right?
No, 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 no. Pasta is made with wheat, yes, but it's not. See, sourdough bread is made with leavening. So the difference between like what you're talking about with sourdough bread and pasta is not made with yeast. There is no yeast in it. There's no water in it. You actually add water when you're making the pasta. So there is no leavening agent. What I'm trying to say is there's no leavening agent in any type of pasta. So it's impossible for it to be leavened. So when you look at crackers, all that stuff actually has leavening added to it. The difference with the two is like cereal has leavening added. All of those things are wheat, but it's not just wheat of themselves. They'll have the water and the yeast added, or baking soda and yeast. Usually the way you leaven something, to explain this for everyone here, you got to add leavening agents to something. Wheat of itself is never leavened. Wheat of itself is flat. What makes it leavened in the oven is you put a yeast packet, you put water to it or sugar to it. That's what leavens it. You see what I'm saying? So that's never in pasta. Pasta, you're fine. Rice, you're fine.
Pasta, right.
Grain of itself, sis, is not leavened. So I just want to make people see this is why, and this is another reason I can't stand certain modern Bibles. They changed the word leaven to yeast, and I'm like,
yeah.
it's like you can't do that because now you're getting people into a rabbinical mindset.
Yeah.
When you translate the Greek and Hebrew word for leaven as yeast, it's giving a whole different mindset because, like I said, yeast of itself is not a leavening agent. It has to be mixed with something. It has to be activated for it to become leaven. So, for example, right, you could have baking soda in your cupboard all year. That's not leavening anything. That's of itself, it cannot leaven anything. For it to be leaven, you have to mix it with water. Whether it's baking soda, whether it's yeast, when it gets activated when it gets mixed with water. So that what I mean is culturally we have to understand this commandment. Yahuwah gave this commandment in a farming agricultural context, not in a 2026 context where now you have new inventions like, dry yeast you can use to make bread, and you still have to add water to it for it to be leaven. Yeast of itself is not leaven. A lot of people don't understand that. Yeast of itself is just yeast. It's not leaven. So there's a difference. When it's leavened is when you add water to it or you add it with something else that activates it. Okay? And you can look this up online, just double check on me. I don't want you to just blindly trust me. You can look it up for yourself on Google. It'll tell you the same thing. So this is just a loss we've lived in these cities for so long, sis, we've lost the understanding that a lot of the Torah is given in a agricultural farming context. So this is why a lot of the Mennonites and a lot of them, they keep certain aspects of the Torah because they're farmers. And you'll see some of these like Quakers and the Mennonites and all them, they have certain aspects of the Old Testament in their culture because a lot of the Old Testament is agricultural. It's not city life. It really isn't. Like a lot of it, the reason we have such a hard time understanding it is it's agricultural.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so what I'm trying to say is if you're just throwing away baking soda, you're kind of putting a heavy burden on yourself. If you're just throwing away baking soda or yeast packets, that's not what he's talking about. So it's important to understand that, and you'll see throughout the Passover chapter here, he keeps saying, "Do not eat anything leavened." So again, eat, not drink. So again, my point is with the wine, because people will say, "Oh, there's yeast in wine." Yeah, but bread yeast and wine yeast are not the same thing. Number one. So even if you want to interpret it as yeast, there's a type of yeast he would be talking about. He's not talking about wine yeast. Because again, like I said, if the Last Supper is a Passover meal, you would have to then interpret it that they're finishing a bottle of wine in the night. Because by the following sunset, they gotta get all their leaven out. So again, it's important to understand that bread yeast is not the same as wine yeast. You can even look in the store just to prove my point. If you go to a grocery store, they're completely separate, two different things. So,
like sis, the things I had to worry about getting rid of were fully leavened products that, like for example, breadcrumbs. Right? I use a lot of breadcrumbs. That's a fully leavened product that has just been ground up. So I had to get rid of like half a bottle of those. Things like that. Bisquick. Yeah.
If you have a lot of processed food that would come from leavened bread, that is made from leavened bread, you're gonna have to get rid of that.
Yeah, that's the
don't worry about yeast extract. I know we've said this for many years in this fellowship. Yeast extract is like a glutamate. It is not really. And even from what I looked at, even if it was really extract from yeast, even the internet will tell you that if it's extracted from yeast, there's no leaven being extracted. They extract flavor and sodium from the yeast. So they're not extracting leaven. They're not extracting yeast. They're extracting like little aspects or flavor palettes from the yeast. To get yeast extract. It's like an alternative to MSG. They claim it's supposed to be a more, I guess what you would say, a more natural type of MSG. So that seems to be what that is. Okay, so if you have like seasonings that say yeast extract, don't worry about it. Because it's very similar to MSG. It's very similar. It's not yeast, it's not leaven. You don't have to worry about that. Trying to think of other things people have misconceptions on. I would say anything that is made from bread, anything that's a bread byproduct, get out. Croutons, get out of your house. Trying to think. What else? Yeah, I would say if you
like
have
cake mixes, if you have any cake.
Pizza, you're going to want to get out before the 15th of the month. Anything that is risen bread.
Yeah.
Bread that rises, okay? So anything that's risen bread. Oh, here's the tricky one. Mission tortillas, you can only have corn tortillas from them. Every other type of Mission tortillas, whether it's the Carb Smart, all of them are leavened. The yellow corn or white corn tortillas are the only ones that are not leavened. So for some reason they put leavening in all the other ones. Like whether it's baking soda with water or whatever, they add leavening to them. So even when you would think of it, I would say, if you have non-bread, get rid of the non-bread that's leavened too.
Yeah.
A lot of the flatbreads, believe it or not, use leavening. And I don't know why. It's weird. So
that's strange.
But yeah, those are the things you actually, for a fact, I know you're gonna have to get rid of if you have anything that's like a bread product, anything that would be made from bread that's leavened in an oven. So anything that's a byproduct of bread, even you're gonna have to
Why
get
did you
rid of.
say cereal? You said cereal.
Oh, what was that, sis? I'm sorry.
You said if you have cereal in your home.
Cereal.
Yeah, cereal's leavened too. Yeah, cereal's leavened. It will say it on it. It will say it on it. It will say like water as one ingredient, yeast as the second ingredient. Like basically you want to look at your ingredient list. You want to look at if it says water as one of the ingredients, yeast as one of the ingredients that's activated, that's leavened. Sometimes it will just say leavening. It will literally say leavening in the ingredients. Yes, cereal, believe it or not, is leavened. It is. It will literally say it on it, no matter what cereal you have. It will say that. Because basically the way they make cereal, I would assume they're using some type of form of leavened wheat that's actually has been through a leavening process, and then they're just they're processing it somehow. I don't know, but I know that it says leavening on a lot of the cereals. A lot of them say it. So I don't even take a chance, you know, with stuff like that. We got rid of a lot of our stuff like that, like very early on in this month, because we had to worry about that. So, I'm trying to think. I don't think anything else you really have to worry about as long as it's, basically focus on the bread byproducts, like I said, croutons, cereal, crackers. A lot of the crackers out there will be leavened, unless Triscuits, right, is the only one.
They say Triscuits are kosher approved.
Well, and they're unleavened.
Yeah, they're unleavened.
More importantly, they're unleavened. I don't really care about what they consider kosher for Passover, because they make up their own rules. I swear, certain wines they think are not they're not kosher. So it's like, yeah, okay. I'm not really worried about what a rabbi says. I'm more worried about like if it's leavened or not. So, but yeah, Triscuits I looked up online are the only cracker I know of that is not leavened. They don't put any leavening agents into the product. So that's what always look at the ingredients. I would tell you, like, as you see Passover approaching, in the future, try to minimize the amount of leavened stuff you get the month before so it's not so crazy. Like, that's what I would recommend. Like for us, right? Regular bread. We stopped buying regular bread like what, a month ago?
Yeah.
So we don't even have to throw that out because we don't have it. So I already started buying us the corn, and I'll show you the Mission corn tortillas. Anyone that's
Street
interested,
tacos, yeah.
they're called street tacos. So I'll show you what this is. The only one that I'm aware of. Either get the yellow corn or the white corn tortilla. Yellow corn tortilla Mission. So it looks like this. You'll see in the store. And they're not that expensive. They're $2.48 a pack. They're really, from where we're living, they're not that expensive. We'll probably get like at least 2 or 3 packs of these for this month, just so we have something with our breakfasts and stuff, for the week of unleavened bread, because we're not going to be able to have regular bread.
No.
The only thing you can do is if you want to have regular unleavened bread, if you have flour already. By the way, don't throw out flour. Oh my goodness. Please, people, don't throw out
flour.
Do not throw out bread flour or all-purpose flour. Neither one of them have leavening in it, or even yeast. Yeast has to be. Let me explain this. Like when you're baking bread, right? I think a lot of us know this. You have to add a leavening agent to activate the bread to make it leavened. If you're not so basically, what I'm trying to say is, guys, if you have yeast packets in your cupboard, don't throw them out. If you got flour in your cupboard, don't throw them out. Neither one of them are leavened until they're combined with water. So this is what I'm trying to say. Like, we got to be careful not to add to the word. And I know it gets tricky when you're new to this. You're just trying to be careful, but we got to make sure we're not adding to the word, okay? Flour of itself, usually, unless it says self-rising flour, that you have to get rid of. Self-rising flour means they already added a leavening agent to it for you. And a lot of people get self-rising flour because it's easy. It's a convenience. But again, self-rising flour is the only flour you should be throwing out at all. So I want to make that clear. I don't want people start throwing out the flour and then you'd be like, oh, I can't make unleavened bread now because I throw out my flour. Don't go crazy with it. Don't. This is why I say be very careful, very careful. A lot of these messianic congregations, and I'm not trying to throw shade at them, but a lot of these messianic Jewish congregations, they love adding to the word. They get all these rabbinical Talmudic teachings, and this is the time of year that those that are really pulling from the Talmud, you're going to start seeing. It's going to start being more obvious what congregations are a little bit of rabbinical and Talmudic, because you will see with the feasts how they keep it. Okay, so again, and I'm not trying to throw shade, I'm just being honest. Okay, but this is the time of year that it gets a little crazy. So anyway, hopefully that helped. Moshe called all the elders of Israel. So we're at verse 21 here. Go away and take to yourselves a lamb according to your family. So basically, he's giving these commands right on the 10th of the month. So as he's giving these commands, it's not the 14th yet. You shall take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in some blood. By the door you shall touch the lintel, shall put it on the two doorposts and on the door. But none of you shall go out to the door, out of the door of his house until morning. Yahuwah shall pass by to smite the Egyptians, and shall see the blood on the lintel upon the doorpost, and Yahuwah shall pass over the door and shall not. And this is why a lot of people, you'll see some people out there trying to say Yahuwah is the destroyer, supposedly. No, he's not. Right here, right? In the last part of the verse. And shall not allow the destroyer to enter your house and to kill you. So the destroyer is separate from Yahuwah. It's a destroying messenger. And by tradition, it's interesting to note the Hebrews would have understood the destroyer as none other than the adversary. Just a little tidbit there. So basically, possibly in the original Passover story, it was a confrontation somewhat between Yahusha and the devil. That basically he was protecting our spirit. I don't like to say the word ancestors, but our spiritual forefathers, the original Israelites, from the devil. Okay, so, and keep this thing as an ordinance for yourself and for your children forever. And if you should enter into the land which Yahuwah shall give you, as he has spoken, keep this service, and it shall come to pass. If your sons say to you, what is this service, that you shall say to them, this Passover is a sacrifice to Yahuwah, as he defended the houses of the children of Yashar in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians, but delivered our houses. And the people bowed and worshipped, and the children of Yashar departed and did as Yahuwah commanded Moshe and Aaron, so did they. Now, this is talking about the firstborn slain. Now, notice how it says, and it came to pass at midnight. This is how we know the lamb was supposed to be eaten at midnight, okay? Or they should have been almost finished eating the lamb by the time it's midnight, okay? That Yahuwah struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on the throne to the firstborn of the captive in the dungeon, and the firstborn of all the cattle. And Pharaoh rose up by night, and his servants and the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in the land of Egypt. There was not a house in which there was not one dead. And so now Pharaoh calls to Moshe and all them. We know this story. Okay, he says, take with you your sheep and your oxen, barak me also, pray for me. Basically he's in fear. He's like, he doesn't want this calamity to continue. And the Egyptians constrained the people so that they cast them out of the land in haste. And they said, we shall die if and the people took their dough before the meal was leavened. Again, part of the commandment. Before it was leavened. Bound it up as it was. So even right here, you could say they already made dough that was not leavened to take with them in their sacks. Okay, so obviously, again, pointing back to, you should not be throwing out your dough, guys. Okay, or your flour. Okay, bound it up as it was in their garments on their shoulders, and the children of Yashar did as Moshe commanded them, and they asked of the Egyptians articles of silver and gold and apparel. And Yahuwah gave his people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. They lent to them, and they plundered the Egyptians. And now it's talking about when they went to Sukkot, okay? They went up with them, sheep and oxen, very much cattle. Now 600,000 footmen And then you had, let's see, they went from Ramesses to Sukkot, besides the baggage. So that's just 600,000 men, not including their bags. Now, I wonder if that's just the men.
That's just the men.
Jeez.
There were like over 1 million of them.
So I would say, even let's say there's like almost an equal amount of women, right?
Yeah.
You're at least talking about 600,000 times 2. What would that be? 12, a million? Let's
see.
1,200,000? That would be at least.
Yeah, around 1.2 million. Yeah.
Yeah, 1.2 million at least.
Yep.
So provision for themselves for the journey. The reason I'm skimming, guys, is because we have so much other cross references to do. So I'm kind of just skimming here. Okay, so sojourning children of Israel while they sojourn. Now, this is important too, guys, why you should consider the Septuagint here. This creates a major issue in a lot of these Bibles. Okay, your Masoretic, and Brother Dennis, you could even just check me if I'm wrong, look in your ISR at Exodus 12, verse 40. The Masoretic literally takes away the word Canaan here. And it makes you think they were in Egypt for 400 years. So the Masoretic version would say the sojourning of the children of Yasharal, that when they sojourned in the land of Egypt, in the land of Egypt was 430 years. That's how the Masoretic would say, right? The LXX says, and also the Samaritan Torah agrees, and the Targum agrees, that they were in Egypt and the land of Canaan for a total 430 years, which means like what? Roughly what would be 430 divided by 2? 215 maybe? 215, yeah. So 215 years in Canaan, 215 years in Egypt, basically. Okay? And so you have 3 witnesses for that version. The LXX, Targums, and the Samaritan Torah all agree that they were, for a total of 430 years, it was split for 215 in Egypt, 215 in Canaan. So anyone that tells you that they were slaves, that the Hebrews were slaves for 430 years, that is a lie. They were slaves for 215 years, guys. They were not. The slavery in Egypt by the Zionists has been because they're trying to claim to be the people, right? So these Edomite Zionists have gotten people to believe that the slavery was so bad that they were almost slaves for like near 500 years. When in actuality, they were only slaves for 215 years. I'm not saying that that's great, but I'm just saying it's been exaggerated, okay? Just like the Holocaust has been exaggerated, okay? They were slaves for 215 years. Then Yahuwah rescued them, okay? They were 215 years in Canaan first, Abraham to Moses, okay? They were 215 years in Canaan, then 215 in Egypt. So be very careful. Very careful when someone says, "Oh, well, they were slaves for over 400 years." No, they weren't. Okay, so, and it came to pass after the 430 years, all the forces of Yahuwah came forth out of the land of Egypt by night. It is a watch kept to Yahuwah, so that he should bring them out of the land of Egypt. That very night is a watch kept to Yahuwah, so that it should be to all the children of Yisrael to their generations. And Yahuwah said to Moshe and Aaron, "This is the law of the Passover. No stranger shall eat of it, and every slave of the servant bought with money you shall circumcise, and he shall eat of it." Talks about the sojourner. You shall not carry the flesh out from the house. Bone of it you shall not break. All the congregation of the children of Yisrael shall keep it. If any convert or proselyte. Now, what I like about sometimes the Septuagint, it will paraphrase like a stranger that's in covenant as a proselyte.
Right.
Shall keep to you the Passover to you. So I want to make it very clear when people say, and again, I'm not trying to throw shade on any Christians watching here, but if you haven't come out of the church and you're still doing Sunday service, you're still doing this, you're still doing that, you are not a proselyte. You are not crossed over yet. You should not be keeping the Passover, okay? This is why it's important to understand this. It wasn't just regular strangers, guys. It was strangers that were in covenant. They were already ready to be circumcised. They were not regular Gentiles from another belief system. Okay? So I know this sounds harsh, but a Christian is still someone that is in a religion being deceived. I'm not saying it's their fault. Okay? I'm not saying it's all their fault, but they're deceived by the devil in a man-made religion. They are not in covenant fully with Yahuwah yet.
No.
They might be seeking Yahuwah. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying they have a genuine heart. They might be wanting to serve the Creator. But in reality, who they are worshiping in the church is Baal. Okay? So they are not able to keep the Passover. I understand why people do this. They do it as a witnessing opportunity. Yahuwah does not give this to you as a witnessing opportunity.
No.
I want to make this very clear, guys. Yahuwah never, ever, ever during the feast says, go to the Gentiles and invite them to the feast. Not once. Not once does he say that. So this whole idea of using it, I get where it comes from. It's from our heart, genuinely. We want to reach people. There's other times to do that. The feasts are meant to be the kingdom of Yahuwah's, okay? It is for the feasts, okay? It's meant to be for Yahuwah's people and only Yahuwah's people. It's not for the whole world. We got to understand, too, yes, the whole world's going to be judged, right? They're going to be judged under the law of Moses. But technically, Mom, right? Who was given the law of Moses?
Yeah, children.
Only the children of Israel, right? Meaning that only the children of Israel get to do these things. You can't be in another faith system serving another mighty one and then try to keep his Torah. It doesn't work that way. So this is why I say it's extremely important to understand this concept. And so just to explain to you guys the difference between a regular stranger, a passerby in those times, they would just pass by and stay the night in Israel, and then they would leave. They would never serve Yahuwah. They would continue to be a pagan. A proselyte is someone that is grafted in. Okay, so what this is talking about, it says, if any proselyte shall come to you to keep the feast, keep the Passover to Yahuwah, you shall circumcise every male of him. So why are they circumcising him? Because he's in covenant. Okay, that's the difference. He's in relationship with Yahusha. Like Christianity, we love to say, when we were in Christianity, we love to say it's a relationship. It's a relationship. I would agree. But relationships have rules. Relationships are covenants. They're not just, oh, fun little relationship. No, this is serious. So, this is a heavenly, righteous, set apart relationship, covenant, righteous, heavenly covenant relationship that Gentiles are welcomed in. Those of the Gentiles whom Yahuwah elects are welcomed in. But not every passerby is going to want to be in covenant with Yahuwah. So you got to understand that you can't just like try to force it on a Christian and be going up to a Christian and be like, oh, hey, you want to, keep Passover with me. I know we mean well, but it's like the old saying that the chicken has to come before the egg. Faith in the right creator has to come before keeping the Torah. And really, there is no precept in the scriptures for you to take a Gentile friend of yours to the feasts. There is no precept in the script in Yahuwah's perfect. No, you're in Yahuwah's heavenly word to do that. So that's just my 2 cents there, okay? Because it makes it very clear that this is a certain type of stranger that's getting circumcised, and all of his house is getting circumcised. You would only get circumcised if you're in covenant with Yahuwah. So, again, but anyway, and then shall he approach to sacrifice it. He shall be even as the original inhabitant of the land. No uncircumcised person shall eat of it. There shall be one law to the native and to the proselyte coming among you. Again, proselyte, convert, okay, to the Hebrew faith. Okay. The children of Yashua did as Yahuwah commanded Moshe, and Aaron did so they did. And it came to pass in that day that Yahuwah brought out the children of Yashua from the land of Egypt with their forces. So again, that was Exodus 12. Now, Exodus 13 we're not going to do today, but just FYI for those that are new to Exodus 13, this is all about the leaving of Egypt. If you want to read that for yourself on your own time, This goes into how Yahuwah delivered them from Egypt, how he got his people out of Egypt, the original Israelites. Okay, so we read about this again. It points to Yahusha. Some of the Christians might be asking themselves right now, if you're still here watching us, why are we reading about this? Well, the blood on the doorpost, Yahusha. That's the foreshadowing of the crucifixion. Um, then you also have, right, the foreshadowing, of other things of that aspect. We even talked about how they understood that Yahusha was the one protecting them from the destroyer, right? So all these feasts are about him. They're all about him. So we got, one thing that Yahuwah did work on me, and I believe he is electing some Christians right now that may be listening. You might be one that Yahuwah Almighty, Yahushua Messiah is electing to come out of the church. One of the ways he does elect, he sees your hearts. If your hearts are really circumcised to want to do these things or not, or whether you have a hardened heart or not. Okay, that's one of the ways Yahuwah selects in his election. I mean, he also pre-knows. I mean, that's a whole nother context for a whole nother day, a whole nother study for a whole nother day. But Yahuwah knew from the foundation of the world who he was going to elect. So that's a whole nother context for a whole nother day. But all right, so we talked about Exodus 12, right? Alex X says protect, spread his protection. In the Targums, it's even more specific. So if we have time, I might go back to the Targums later and just show you that, how it's more specific about his protection. Exodus 23, 14 to 15, I think will be the next one. So Exodus 23, 14 to 15. Let's see here. I think Sister Marissa, since you volunteered, would you like to read Exodus 23, 14 to 15?
Yes. 23, 14 to 15?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the ISR, it says, 3 times in the year, you are to celebrate a festival to me. Guard the festival of Matzot. 7 days you eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you, at the time appointed in the new moon of Abib. For in it you came out of Mizraim, and do not appear before me empty-handed.
Yeah. So that's very clear there. So you got 3 feasts, right? And so 3 feasts the men. Just want to make it very clear this is in context talking about the men. How I know is because other places in the Torah it will say men. All your males, men. So even though it doesn't say men in this place, it says men in other cross references. So that's why I recommend people have the Blue Letter Bible app. And I think since I shared that with you recently, the Blue Letter Bible app, if you have an Android or iPhone, you should be able to get it on your phone. It's very good for these type of topics because it will show you actually on the header where it says the 3 feasts. It will actually have in parentheses in a link all the other cross references for these feasts. So you can go there and get context. So I really recommend Blue Letter Bible app from the blueletterbible.org. You can get it on, I think, iTunes or the Google Play Store. So it's very handy, very handy. So, but yeah, so 3 times the men, the context would be the men are bringing these offerings to the temple or the tabernacle 3 times of the year, not appearing empty-handed, okay, of the sacrifices. So a lot of people say, well, Doug, what about today? I don't want to appear empty-handed. And I'll be like, well, first of all, what kind of priesthood are we in today? Do we have Levites today? Because you can't, as a normal Israelite, put an animal on an altar, okay? So Yahuwah doesn't contradict himself, okay? If you read the whole Torah, understand the whole Torah in context, this was being given in a Levitical priesthood context, okay? There is no offerings in a Melchizedek priesthood. A lot of these things are put on hold right now. We have to understand that. And even like I think Sister Marissa brought up a great point where it says forever. We have to understand though, these things like we were talking about last Shabbat, these things, even though it says forever, it's forever to be kept in its context, in the context that it's given. So meaning that as long as you have Levites, you can keep that. As long as you're in a Levitical priesthood where there's a temple, where there's a tabernacle to give these offerings, where his name dwells, you can do that. And you should be doing that forever. But the fact is, forever doesn't mean forever in any type of context or any type of situation. These are situational commands. These are situational commands where, again, Exodus 23, they're already traveling with Yahuwah in the wilderness, and he's telling them a lot of these feasts are going to be kept in a specific type of way like this once they get into the land. Once they get into the land and they have a temple, a lot of these commands were kept in that context. So yes, it's forever, but forever in the context of a Levitical priesthood, forever in the context of a what is it called? Of being in the land with a temple, right? So, and that's why I say the Levitical priesthood has to come back, because to Sister Marissa's point last week, forever. So obviously, you can't say Messiah did away with the Levitical priesthood if these things are to be kept forever. That means at some point the Levitical priesthood, when he returns, has to come back, you know? So that's the context. So I know a lot of people are getting confused though with stuff like that in this walk. It's like you have to rightly divide scripture. You have to rightly divide it in the proper context, in the proper situation that law was given. And if you're not in a situation where you can physically be able to do it, it's not sin to refrain from something you can't physically put your hands to do.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, there's no temple to bring animals. There's no temple to give grain. There's no temple to give a sheaf offering. We are not sinning from refraining from giving offerings because we can't do it anyway. Yahuwah's not going to hold you, sin against you when you can't do it. For example, Daniel was giving no offerings in Babylon at all when there was a Levitical priesthood, mind you. Okay, so we can't let the enemy start putting false guilt in our minds. The devil loves to do that. Oh, see, you're in sin. No, we're not. If there's no Levitical priesthood, how are we in sin? If there's no priest to be giving these offerings, how are we in sin? It's okay, guys. Like, and I don't mean this condescendingly, but it's okay, guys, for us to use our cognitive function, Yahuwah baruked us with. Use common sense. If it's sin to not be able to give offerings for eternity, then why does even Yahusha kind of hints away till heaven and earth pass away? So the Levitical priesthood in a eternal sense might not even be eternal. That part of the law might not even be eternal, because he says till heaven and earth pass away in Matthew 5. He gives an ending point to the law in general. So again, even though like our English Bibles say forever and stuff like that, we have to understand that like forever has to be in that type of context. Forever is, that law is to be kept in that proper context. So let's say, right, the new heaven, new earth, there's no more Levitical priesthood, right? Because there's no more sin. Then there's no more need for sacrifices. There's no more need. And Yahushua himself says, till heaven and earth pass away. So he does give an ending point to the law, or maybe parts of the law, like the sacrifices. Okay, so like we also have to look at all scripture, take scripture as a whole. And I know in the church we're used to like cherry picking verses, but we gotta be. I'm just saying in the nicest way possible. We have to be careful. I know it's not intentional, but we gotta be careful not to take one verse and run with it. So we gotta look at the whole context, right? Because this is all about Levitical stuff in this whole chapter. The blood and the fat of the sacrifice to give to Yahuwah. Don't eat the blood and don't eat the fat of his sacrifices. All that's Levitical priesthood. All of that. So the only part of this chapter that seems to not be Levitical is like way at the end when it talks about Yahushua pre-incarnate. And I just want to mention this for the Christians. If you don't know, now you're going to know. Okay? Yahushua. Okay? Sometimes in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament, he will be called the messenger of Yahuwah. Okay? Or it will say, my messenger. Okay? This is not talking about a regular angel. This is talking about the creator. Pre-incarnate form, Yahushua HaMashiach, Yahuwah Almighty, pre-incarnate form before he took on human form. as the messenger of Yahuwah. So, for example, right, how we know this, this ties right to John chapter 5. I came in my Father's name, right? And behold, I send my messenger, this is Father talking, before your face, that he may keep you in the way. I know that sounds familiar, right? Who is the way, the truth, the life? Okay? That he may bring you into the land, which I've prepared for you. Take heed to yourself, hearken to him, don't disobey him, for he will not give way to you, for my name is on him. And I think the Hebrew there would say, he will not forgive your sin.
Right.
So this is a big deal here for like the church is always taught, oh, we're covered by his blood, we can do whatever. If this is Yahusha here, this is part of his character. Okay? So he is not going to forgive willful sin. Okay? And you see that in Hebrews chapter 10 as well. Okay? It says if we sin and we continue on sinning, already knowing the truth and all that, okay, that's talking about on purpose sin or willful, 100% willful sin. You know, like Genesis 6 was willful sin according to the book of Enoch. The sons of Elohim, the watchers, knew what they were doing. They willfully sinned, and there was no intercession for them at all. Yahuwah said to Enoch, nope, nope, you can't intercess for them. There's no forgiveness, nope. So it's not that Yahuwah's meaner. No, no, don't say it. It's not that he's evil spirit or mean. It's that Yahuwah has righteous judgment. There are consequences for our actions. There are consequences for willfully, on purpose, continuing in sin. No. No. All right, so hopefully you guys get that. I want to go to other scriptures here, just a couple others here. So Exodus 34:25, probably to save time here, I might just read it out of my physical scriptures here. Yeah, I should have a physical Septuagint here, just to save a little bit of time here. Oh. All right, so Exodus 34:25. So let's see here. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I know it's right before Leviticus here. Oh, the Greek has weird spelling for these books. Leviticon? That is weird in the Greek. Okay. Let's see here. Here we go. All right, so 34:25. I don't know why I have that here. That has nothing to do with. How does yours read, Mom, in that verse?
Thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, neither shall the sacrifice of the feast of the Pesach be left unto the Lord.
Okay, yeah, I forgot. The Septuagint sometimes has different chapter numbering sometimes in Exodus. It gets a little weird.
That's true.
Yeah, so mine is actually talking about women's garments. I don't know if that's weird. Okay. That's yeah, that has to have. I'm gonna have to use the ISR, the restored name King James, from now on in this study. All right, so this is a restored name King James here. All right. So basically, this is talking about the sacrifice of the Passover, and let's see here, 3 years. See right here, this is what I was talking about, right, with the other verse. So 3 years, all your men.
Mm-hmm.
Now, children, I don't think it's supposed to say children. King James, what are you doing? What are you doing? That it should not say men, children. What are you doing? Yeah, no. 3 times in a year, all your men, not children or men, children. All your men shall appear before Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yasharal. So again, this is where we get the idea. Only the men would bring the offerings to the priest. Only the men. So again, this is important to understand the context of this. So when it talks about appearing empty-handed, technically none of us can prevent that at this point. The only thing that you can give to Yahuwah is offering yourself as a living sacrifice, like Paul talks about, right? Paul, again, in Hebrews, talks about there was a change in the Torah. Not that the Torah is done away with, there was a change in the Torah. in the Melchizedek priesthood, a lot of the offerings now in a Melchizedek priesthood, the only offerings we really have that we see Paul talk about, Peter talk about temporarily is bulls of our lips, okay? Bulls of our lips and living set apart. That's the sacrifices given in spiritually. No. I don't. No, no. Okay. All right. So Numbers 9:2, 4, 5, 6, and 10 to 14. I knew we were going to get to this part. So, all right. Yahuwah spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai in the first new month of the second year after they had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, saying, and again, footnote says or a month, meaning Kodesh, the Hebrew word can mean moon or month. So I'm reading from the ISR 2009 here. Now let the children of Yasharel perform the Pesach. Wonder why it's spelled that way. They got a weird way of spelling the Hebrew here. They leave the C out at the end. That is weird. Pesach at its appointed time on the 14th day of the new month between the evenings before it at its appointed time according to all its laws and right rulings you shall do it. So there we go. We're going to fast forward here to the second part of this chapter, verse 6 here. But there were men who were defiled for a being of a man. Now, I hate it when the ISR does this. They try. It's like they try to paraphrase it too much. Okay, so basically they were defiled by touching the dead body of a man, is what it's saying, so that they were not able to perform the Pesach on that day. So why couldn't they do it? Because they touched a dead body. Okay, and again, we talked about this off the record before, Mom. Like, how long are you unclean by touching a dead body?
A week.
A week, right? So technically, if you, let's say you touch a dead body on the 7th, right, of Abib, if the Passover is not there until the 14th, you'll be clean. So very careful people are not, you got to be very careful not to twist this understanding of this chapter just so you can keep it in the next month, okay? Unless you're being, and again, no one can claim they're on a journey. I know people are going to say, well, no, you can't. If there's no temple, there's no tabernacle. Yahuwah's people are not together keeping it anyway in this Melchizedek heavenly priesthood right now. No one, the fact is there's no one place where all of Israel's gathering. So you can't say you're on a long journey. That's the context of being on a long journey. It's not about, oh, well, I'm not home right now. You could keep the Passover wherever you are. They were keeping the Passover in the wilderness, guys. They were keeping the Passover in Egypt in captivity. It had nothing to do with being able to be with enough people. The only time that you had everyone together for Passover was in the land, when they were in the land and they had a temple, okay? Or they had a tabernacle in the wilderness. That's the only time they had everyone in the land, okay? Or at one place at one time, okay? Even with the original Passover that we just read about in Exodus 12, not everyone was in one place, okay? You know, basically the Hebrews lived next to one another, but they were not all in one place, okay? So they were each other's neighbors, but they were not like literally all in one house, okay? Okay, so it talks about they were defiled by touching a dead body of a man, bring near the offering of Yahuwah at its appointed time among the children of Yashral. And Moshe said to them, wait while I hear Yahuwah concerning this matter, concerning you. Yahuwah said to Moshe, saying, speak to children of Yashral, when any male of you is unclean for a being or is far away on a journey, he shall perform the Passover of Yahuwah. Notice how it says a man, a male. This is not for women, okay? So I want to make that very clear. If you know of any sisters that are trying to wait until the second month, they shouldn't be doing that. And again, the context here, guys, is the idea that everyone had to be together at the temple for Passover. That didn't happen until there was a sacrificial system. Okay? Not everyone, Yahuwah originally never commanded everyone to be in one place at one time to celebrate the Passover. He never said you had to be everyone together. So for those out there saying, well, we have to wait because the men are unclean. No, you don't. The men that were unclean had to wait, not the whole congregation. If you read this chapter in context, they're the ones waiting, not the rest of Israel. Okay, so it clearly says any male of you. Doesn't say women too. Okay, on the 14th day of the second new month between the evenings, they perform it. With unleavened bread and bitter herbs, they eat it. Okay, so again, this is another context a lot of us miss it. And I have to be honest, I had to repent of it in the past. I thought we were supposed to be eating the unleavened bread with bitter herbs the whole 7 days. But clearly it says here in Numbers 9:11, it says on the 14th day, they perform it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They eat it. The bitter herbs is only supposed to be with unleavened bread for the meal of the Passover.
Okay.
Because it literally says that. They do not eat of it until morning. They do not break a bone of it according to the law of the Passover. They perform it. But the man who is clean and not on a journey and has failed to perform the Passover, that same being shall be cut off from among his people because he did not bring the offering of Yahuwah at his appointed time. And the man bears his sin. Again, this is why we need a savior, okay? This points to Yahusha. Before Yahusha came and was crucified for us, he gave himself on a righteous, he sacrificed himself for us righteously to bear our sins. We did not have that in the first covenant. So a lot of these, it kind of drives me crazy when I see a lot of these so-called brothers and sisters out there claiming that it's not a new covenant, it's a renewed covenant. You don't want it as a renewed covenant. And I'll tell you why. In the first covenant, there was no taking away of sins. This is what Paul talks about. He talks about the problem with the first covenant was the people. The people were with fault. And the people were not perfect. The priests were not perfect. So those that want to say, oh, Yahusha is the minister of just a renewed covenant, no, you don't want that.
Yeah.
There technically was no eternal salvation yet. This is what we need to understand. The difference between the Levitical priesthood and Melchizedek priesthood, the Levitical priesthood was always going to be temporary.
Yeah.
It was always pointing to the substance. It was always pointing to Yahusha because only he could take away your sins.
Yeah.
And I just want to drill that home here. So don't call it a renewed covenant. Don't do that because you're taking away the difference then of the two covenants, okay? One covenant was pointing to blotting out our sins. The first covenant in priesthood could never blot away your sins. It could only cover it. Yahuwah blots away our sins with his sacrifice. So I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying here. That's the difference. That's why it is a brand new covenant. It's not the same. The first covenant was pointing to what Yahuwah had prepared in the new covenant. You see what I'm saying? The first covenant was never going to be eternal. The first covenant with David and everyone, that was never going to be eternal. That was meant for a purpose. And Paul goes through all that in Hebrews. He goes through all that. He talks about how basically the blood of bulls and rams could never take away sin.
No.
So when people say it's a renewed covenant, no, you're wrong. It's not. It's not. The new covenant is a new covenant. It's different. So don't let people say that to you. I'm telling you, this whole Messianic Jewish part of this Hebraic roots movement has corrupted people's minds on things. It's not the same. It's not the same covenant, okay? It's the same laws being transferred into a new covenant. It's not the same covenant at all. If it's the same covenant, you still have to wait for the promise of the Savior, okay? The first covenant didn't have the Savior yet, okay? The first covenant didn't have
Mhm.
a sacrifice for sins by Yahusha yet. So let's be careful too and understand that. Okay? Yahusha literally said, "This is the blood of the new
Yes.
covenant."
Mhm.
Not the first covenant. Okay? So this is where you got to understand. And like I see it a lot in this Hebraic roots movement, but they're afraid to say something that sounds similar to Christianity.
Yeah.
And they assume everything from the church is wrong. And that's the problem. So now they create these weird false doctrines like the new covenant is just a renewed first covenant. No, it's not.
Mm-mm.
No, it's not. You can easily see there's a lot of things in the new covenant that wasn't there in the first covenant. Okay. Number one, sacrifices of sin are done. There is no more sacrifices for sin. Okay, the first covenant, you constantly had to offer up a goat once a year for the sins of Israel. We don't do that anymore. That's a sacrifice for sin. We don't do that anymore.
Mhm.
So you can't say it's just a renewed covenant. That's wrong to say that. It's wrong to say that. So,
Because an animal doesn't have righteous blood like he does.
well, I mean, I think it's more or less, Mom, that one man took.
Mhm.
Also, it's more about one man took,
Mhm.
had to take out sin out of the world, like Paul says.
Right, right.
So you can't remove a curse
No.
from a different type of being. Like the animals were never meant to take away sin.
Right.
It was always pointing to Yahushua. The whole point, that's why Paul talks about it. He says the blood of bulls, the blood of rams,
Yeah,
none of that could take away sin.
that's right.
And so the problem is like I said, we get into this movement and we want so badly to prove to Christians that it's not done away with. We start preaching half truths and calling it the renewed covenant. No, it's not a renewed.
No.
Okay, it's not. It's a new covenant.
Yeah.
It's new with better promises,
Mhm.
better priesthood, okay, because it's the eternal heavenly priesthood, okay, by a perfect priest, not a priest who's a mortal man that is fallible, okay? And Paul even breaks that down. I think it's in Hebrews 8, Hebrews 9, if anyone wants to look at that for themselves, where he breaks it down. He says, okay, the problem was not with Yahuwah who gave the covenant. The problem was with the people of the covenant, okay? They were constantly sinning, constantly breaking the covenant. And that's why the new covenant is a better covenant.
Mhm.
It's not equal. The first covenant is not equal to the new covenant. So like when people say that, I understand why they're doing it because they're trying to witness to the Christians and they're trying to get the Christians to come into this walk, but you got to let Yahuwah do that, guys.
Yeah.
You can't be forcing stuff and wording stuff so as to make the Christian convinced. Okay? The fact of the matter is, yes, the Torah's not done away with, but that doesn't make it the same covenant as the first covenant.
Mhm.
Okay? So
Yeah, that's right.
it's very clear there's many differences in the new covenant. One of the biggest differences for right now in this new covenant, like I talked about, there is no physical sacrifices whatsoever right now. Until the millennial happens and the Levitical priesthood is brought back for the millennium, there is no physical sacrifices that can be given. There is no sheaf offering that can be given. All of that, by the way, was pointing to Messiah. So we can say in a spiritual aspect, Yahusha fulfills the sheaf offering
Yeah.
of the first fruits, right? His resurrection is the spiritual sheaf offering. Okay? So that's how we are to look at these feasts also. How do they point to him? Anyway, hopefully I'm getting through here. So to you guys. So hopefully I'm just kind of making sense with what I'm talking about here. So be careful of people that say renewed. They mean well, but that's a deception. It's not the same covenant. And it's not a good thing if it was. It really isn't.
No.
Because you can't have a new priest, a new priesthood in the same covenant. It's not how it works. It's not how it works. So again, you have to understand that. So it's very important to understand that it is a new covenant. It's not a renewed. And in the first new month, no, here, in the first new moon on the 14th, no, here, yes, righteous, yes. It is. In the first new month, on the 14th day, is the Passover of Yahuwah. And on the 15th day of this new moon or new month is a festival. For 7 days, unleavened bread is eaten. So the reason I wanted to bring up verse 15 and 16 of Numbers 28 here, just focus on these two verses, it clearly separates the feasts, right? It says the 14th is the Passover. The 15th is a festival of its own. So it's important to understand that. So for 7 days, unleavened bread is eaten. On the first day is a set apart gathering. You shall do no servile work, and you shall bring near an offering made by fire as an ascended offering to Yahuwah. So this part of it in Numbers 28 talks about all the sacrifices, which again, we can't do right now. We can't offer the bull, the ram, and all that, the hin of oil. That is Levitical priesthood, okay? So again, again, it's important not to get deceived by the enemy. The enemy is going to try to make you think that you're sinning because you physically can't do these offerings right now. The devil's going to mess with your mind. Listen, all this stuff is Levitical priesthood context, okay? Now this is really a separate topic for another day, but the day of first fruits. By the way, first fruits is technically never called a feast day, okay? It's just called the day of first fruits, okay? So first fruits, we keep it as the 16th of Abib. So basically, it's not a Sabbath, it's not a feast, it's the day that you start your count to Pentecost, okay? So for us, it's the 16th of Abib. It is the second day of unleavened bread, okay? So that's when we start our 50-day count to Pentecost. Many have misinterpreted this as that it's the first Sunday following Passover. And there's this whole age-old debate about it. The Sadducees, they thought it was the 22nd of Abib because they interpreted in Leviticus 23. I'm just going to show you guys really quick. They interpreted Leviticus 23:11, I think it is, as meaning the weekly Sabbath. So they interpreted first fruits as the day after the weekly Sabbath. Hence why, a lot of Messianic congregations, they keep it like this coming Sunday, okay? You'll see a lot of them keeping it like, what's today, right? So today we're on the Sabbath, right? Mm-hmm. So tomorrow, or not even tomorrow, no. Yeah, I that's weird. So if we had our Passover tonight, right? And then, yeah, so this Sunday into Monday, some of them will be keeping their first fruits. Okay. Actually,
no.
No.
Our Passover started yesterday and ends tonight.
Right.
Yeah, no. I'm just trying to figure out the people that want to wait until the 22nd of Abib when that would be. So that is weird. They would actually be keeping. They would have to wait an extra 5-6 days. Yeah, that's weird. That's weird. The whole Sadducee view is very weird, and it's based on this verse right here. So Leviticus 23:11, and this is the verse in question. If you look at the Septuagint, it gives you the context. It's supposed to be a Abib 16 as first fruits, not a Abib 22. Okay. So it says here, and he shall lift up the sheaf offering before Yahuwah to be accepted for you on the morrow, meaning the next day, the day after the first day, the priest shall lift it up. What does that mean? It means the day after the first high day of unleavened bread. So basically, the Septuagint lets you know, by the way, it's supposed to be the 16th of Abib when they lift up the sheaf. Okay? Very clear. Now, the Masoretic, they word it as the Sabbath. So this is where the ambiguous thing comes into play with interpretation. So the Masoretic text, like in the ISR, will just say the day after the Sabbath or the morrow after the Sabbath. So then you have to interpret which Sabbath is it talking about. There's two Sabbaths technically, or you could even technically say 3 Sabbaths, right? Mm-hmm. In the week of unleavened bread. Mm-hmm. Because you got the first day of unleavened bread, right. The 21st is a Sabbath, and then you got that weekly Sabbath. Mm-hmm. So it's like 3 Sabbaths. within that 7 days. So this is the problem when the Masoretic text just says Sabbath. It's like, oh, which Sabbath? So the Sadducees would interpret the Hebrew text to mean, oh, okay, so it's the day after the 21st. So that's why you see every year it's like the first Sunday after the week of unleavened bread, they do it, which is not what the Septuagint would say. Septuagint is making very clear that it's the 16th, not the 22nd. So again, so don't be surprised when you see other fellowships like be 6 or 7 days later for the Pentecost count. By the way, this would affect your Pentecost count. Okay, so people might be saying, "Oh, what's this a big deal? It's like half a week or a week off." Yeah, that means you're not counting your 50 days until the following Sunday after Passover. Okay, which would mean that you're 6 or 7 days later than someone like us when we do our count. Okay, because we're basically counting Sunday night into Monday night. Sunday night into Monday night is the 16th. We'll be counting that day as day one of our count. Okay, so people that have said to me, "Oh, it's not a big deal," it kind of is, because now you're going to be a week off from other brothers and sisters. Now you're going to be a week later with Shavuot. Okay, and basically because think about it, if we're counting 50 days from the 16th, right, of Abib, we're counting 50 days later from Monday. Okay, that means that our 50 days is going to be 6, 7 days before other people that do the traditional Sunday following Passover, right? So like the people that follow the Judaism and all that, they will be literally starting their count on that Sunday following this feast. So I guess it'd be what, next Sunday? That would be the 22nd. So again, you're gonna literally be counting your 50 days is gonna be 7 days later than our 50 days. So it does kind of make a difference. And it kind of is a problem. So, and the reason I switched from, I used to do the 22nd back when I was in the first Sunday following the week of unleavened bread. I used to do that one in error because we all just trusted Judaism. But then when you look at the Septuagint, you look at other versions, it makes it more specific what day it is, which Sabbath that this day is after. So basically, the morrow is not the problem. The phrase on the morrow is not the problem. The problem is that it says between the two texts, one will say the day after the Sabbath or the day after the first day. Obviously, the day after the first day is talking about the day after the first day of unleavened bread.
So what does tomorrow mean exactly? That's where I get confused.
Tomorrow.
It's British.
It's a very old English. Says on the morrow would be like tomorrow, or then so to like tomorrow. So basically, it's trying to say the day. If you have like a modern Bible in that verse, it would say the day after the Sabbath or the day after the first day. So that's all it really means. It means the next day, the morrow.
Yeah.
So it's just old English. It's Middle English.
On the morrow.
So the more important part, though, is the fact that it's the first day is the LXX that it's saying as the Sabbath, the high Sabbath. The LXX is calling the Sabbath that you're supposed to wait the day after as the Sabbath in question is the high Sabbath according to the LXX. The Masoretic, who knows? It just says the Sabbath. But then even when you look at other manuscripts for second and third witnesses, right? So we look at Leviticus 23:11. In the Targums, they'll even say the day after the first feast of Passover. So they even let you know that it's the day after the first day of unleavened bread. Because remember, they started calling the whole week Passover. The rabbis started calling the whole week Passover. So when you have the Targum saying it's the day after the first feast day of Pascha, it's talking about the same thing as the Septuagint. It's talking about the 16th of Abib. So again, when you look at that, you look at all these other proofs of it. The Masoretic seems to be the odd one out. So both the Targum Pseudo Jonathan and the Onkelos Targum both agree with the Septuagint. And you can find this on Sepharia.org if you don't have a physical Targum. Safaria.org is a Jewish website. It has like all the Jewish texts. Um, so I'll just put that in the chat here. Let's see here. Paste. Okay, so for example, right, you go to verse 11 here. He shall lift up the sheaf. This is the pseudo Jonathan Targum here. Before Yahuwah to be accepted for you after the first festival day of Pascha, or after the feast day of Pascha. Okay, so meaning the first festival day. So what would that be? The day after the first day of unleavened bread. Okay, because it's after the first feast day of Pascha. So it's almost word for word with the Septuagint. So basically, the Yahusha and his disciples always understood this as this interpretation. Where it gets muddy is with the Sadducees. The Sadducees did the whole first Sunday and all that. They following the week of Passover, the week of unleavened bread. They are really where people get the whole tradition of that they start the count on the 22nd of Abib. That's where they get that whole nonsense, is from the Sadducees. So the Sadducees, I really try to steer people away from really taking any of their interpretations of the calendar. The Sadducees supposedly are also rumored to have been the originators of the solar calendar found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's a lot of issues with the Sadducees. A lot of issues. They and the Pharisees, Yahusha said himself, have leaven in them, in their doctrine. So you got to be careful with the Sadducees and the Pharisees. But the Pharisees, at least in this area, were correct. They followed the same calendar as Yahusha and his disciples. The problem with the Pharisees was that they kept Passover on the wrong day. They kept it on the 15th. That was the problem with them, but that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But anyway, Numbers 33, I think we're almost done with the Tanakh references here. Numbers 33, verse 3. They departed from Ramesses in the first month on the 15th day of the month, and on the day after the Passover, the children of Yashar went forth with a high hand before all the Egyptians. Again, important. They left on the 15th. They could not have eaten the lamb on the 15th. They left on the 15th. So I know there's a lot of people out there that believe in this whole Seder nonsense on the 14th, and then they eat it on the 15th. No, there was no Seder, guys. The Passover Seder did not start until way after Yahusha's time period. Okay? There was no concept of that. Okay? You had the Passover meal on the 14th. The 15th was the first day of unleavened bread. There was no, Seder meal and then the Passover meal on the 15th. The only reason they created the Seder meal, guys, is because they changed the Passover to the 15th for tradition reasons. And they admit this. The rabbis admit this. That's the only reason they eat on the 15th is tradition. It's the only reason. So anyway, hopefully you understand that is not the way to go. That is not the way to do that. So again, I think we talked about Deuteronomy 16, or maybe we didn't. I'll just do it very quickly because I really want to get at least to a couple of New Testament references before our time is up for today. All right, so Deuteronomy 16, mind you, these are the sacrifices for the week of unleavened bread and for the night of Passover. This is not the Passover meal. I want to make that clear. Okay, so you'll see what I'm talking about here. Deuteronomy 16:1, observe the month of new grain. You shall sacrifice the Passover to Yahuwah your Elohim, because in the month of new grain you came out of Egypt by night. Now, see, a lot of people take this out of context. By night. This is where you get the whole idea that supposedly they would have went out at the end of the 15th. No. They would have went out at the end of the 14th, at the start of the 15th, at night. Okay? That does not contradict Exodus, okay? And you shall sacrifice the Passover to Yahuwah your Elohim, sheep and oxen. So a lot of people, like you'll see in Judaism today, like I mentioned off the record, they'll say, oh, see, this is why we don't eat the lamb, because Deuteronomy 16 says it became a sacrifice. No, it didn't. This is not talking about the Passover meal. This is sheep and oxen, offerings. These are sacrifices, offerings. Because it even says, in the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose to have his name called. obviously it's talking about the temple or the tabernacle. The Passover meal never had to be brought to the tabernacle or the temple. You shall not even eat leaven with it. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread with it. So mind you, this possibly might be just referring to the the priest here, the Levitical priest. They had to eat these sacrifices every day of the week with unleavened bread of affliction, because you came forth out of Egypt. In haste that you remember the day of your coming forth out of Egypt. In the land of Egypt all the days of your life. So the coming forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of your life. Okay? And again, so we talk about before leaven shall not be seen in all your borders for 7 days, and there shall not be left of the flesh which you shall sacrifice at evening on the first day until the morning. You shall not have power to sacrifice the Passover in any of your cities. This is how we know it's not talking about the Passover meal. Very clear. These are sacrifices, okay? You shall not sacrifice the Passover in any of your cities, which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you, but in the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose to have his name called there, you shall sacrifice the Passover at evening, at the setting of the sun. Think about that, okay? For those that want to argue that this is talking about the lamb was supposed to be killed before sunset. So why is he telling you now to kill it at the setting of the sun? That would be contradicting, wouldn't it? So this is a sacrifice. These are burnt offerings. This is what this is talking about. At the time when you came out of Egypt, you shall, and here, this should be a dead giveaway. This is not the same thing as Exodus 12. Okay. It says right here, you shall boil and roast it. Now, mind you, in Exodus 12, you're told you can't sodden it. You can't boil it. Okay. You can't boil the Passover lamb. Okay. So this is completely different. You shall boil and roast it, eat in the place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose, and you shall return in the morning and go to your house. Now think about it. The priests were the ones mainly that had to stay at the temple overnight and eat there. Okay. They were the ones that had to do that. 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the 7 days a set apart feast to Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall not do any work in it, save what must be done. Okay. So again, very simple. Let's see here. Where are we at now? So hopefully you guys are understanding here. Deuteronomy 16 is not about the Passover meal. For most of the chapter, it is not about the Passover meal. It is about the offerings they would have to give on the night of Passover at the temple. The Levites had to give offerings. And they had to give offerings all 7 days of the feast of unleavened bread. So that's what that's actually talking about. Joshua 5:10-11, I believe this is their second Passover, and they did this in the wilderness, I believe. So Joshua chapter 5, verse 10-11. Whoops. And the children of Yashua kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening, to the westward on Jericho on the opposite side of the Jordan in the plain, and they ate of the grain of the earth, unleavened and new. Very important to understand. So basically, the grain was already ripened for them to eat when they were in Jericho. Okay, so it would have had to be spring at that point. Okay. All right. Mom, would you like to read 2 Kings 23, chapter 23, 21-22, and verse 23? So do 21-23 in chapter 23. So 2 Kings chapter 23, verses 21-23.
Okay. All right. And he struck down a huge Egyptian. Although the Egyptian had a spear in his hand, Benaiah went against him with a club. He snatched the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. Such were the exploits of Benaiah, son of Jehoiada. He too was as famous as the 3 mighty warriors. He was held in greater honor than any of the 30, but he was not included among the three. And David put him in charge of his bodyguard. Is that 223?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. 21 to 23. That was it. Yeah. Are you sure you were in chapter 23?
Let me double check.
Because it should read as the king commanded all the people,
Yeah,
saying,
that was 23.
really? Because mine says, and the king commanded all the people, saying, keep the Passover to Yahuwah your Elohim, as it is written in the book of this covenant for Passover. So this is supposed to be the Josiah Passover. This had not been kept from the days of the judges who judged Yashrael, even all the days of the kings of Yashrael and of the kings of Yehuda. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, the Passover kept to Yahuwah in Jerusalem. Let me just see. Maybe my eyes are.
Am I in the wrong book or something?
Yeah.
Is that First King?
You're at Second Samuel. It's all right.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, we got to get you glasses, Mom. I know it's not easy. The font is not easy on these Bibles. Yeah. Yeah, so page 332.
Okay.
Now, you could just save it for later. I'll put the little bookmark there. Let's see. It's all right. I know it's difficult. Even from my eyes, this font is not that great. Oh, yeah.
Can she read it again?
Yeah, I'll
sure.
read it. Yes, just
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead. So verse 21 to 23.
from chapter 23.
Yeah. 23, chapter 23, verses 21 to 23.
Okay. All right. The king gave this order to all the people: celebrate the Pesach to Yahuwah, your Elohim, as it is written in this book of the covenant. Neither in the days of the judges who led Yashrael, nor in the days of the kings of Yashrael and the kings of Yehuda had any such Pesach been observed. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, this Pesach was celebrated to Yahuwah in Jerusalem.
Yep. So this is a really important one because this is the first one they had post 70 years in Babylon. So this Josiah one was like really important. So this is when, and I think this is the one in Second Chronicles, and I think I have the Second Chronicles reference even here as well. This is where they have the Levites weren't clean in time, and Yahuwah gave them mercy. He showed them favor, even though in Numbers 9 they weren't supposed to keep it. Yahuwah knew they were 70 years in Babylon, and he's like, all right, I'll he threw them a bone, basically. So Second Chronicles 31 to 2, verse 5, verse 15, 17 to 18. So those are the ones. So let me try to make this easier. Let's do verses 1 to 5 first. That'll make it easier. Yeah, so Second Chronicles 31 to 5. Second Chronicles, by the way, if you imagine it was Second Kings, it pretty much is just reiterating what Kings is saying a lot of the time. Whoever wrote Second Chronicles is just kind of
Yeah, it's a retelling.
It's a rechronicle of Second Kings. So Hezekiah sent to all Yashrael and Yehuda, wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay, no, this is a different one. So this is the Hezekiah Passover. Okay. They should come into the house of Yehuda to Jerusalem and keep the Passover. Oh, I remember this. This is where some of the northern house didn't want to do it. I remember this. All the congregation in Jerusalem desired to keep the Passover in the second month. So this is Hezekiah's Passover was kept in the second month. For they could not keep it at that time because sufficient number of the priests had not purified themselves, and the people was not gathered in Jerusalem. And the proposal pleased the king and congregation. They established a decree. Proclamation should go through all of Israel from Beersheba to Dan that they should come and keep the Passover to Yahuwah. Alu of Yashrael at Jerusalem, for the multitude had not done it lately, according to the scripture. So basically, they were so paganized from Babylon, they weren't even keeping the feast before Hezekiah came.
Yeah.
And the posts with the letters king of the princes, all Yashua, according to the command of the king, saying, children of Yashua, return to Yahuwah, Eluah of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, bring them back that have escaped, those that were left of the hand of the king of Assyria. So this is important.
Yeah.
Some of the northern house was there. I think these are those that actually become the Samaritans, if I was to guess. So basically the captivity of Sennacherib and all that. So, and be not as your fathers and your brother who revolted from Yahuwah Eluah of your fathers, and he gave them up to desolation, as you see. And now harden not your hearts as your fathers did. All right, so let me make sure, because I'm only supposed to be reading certain verses here. Okay, so let me jump down to verse 15 to 18, just for time's sake. This is a really good chapter to read when you have some free time, but just right now, I gotta, for time constraints, read only 15 to 18. Then they killed the Passover on the 14th day of the second month. The priests and Levites repented and purified themselves and brought the whole burnt offering to the house of Yahuwah. Again, the Levites, okay? And they stood at their posts according to the commandment of Moshe, the man of Eluah, and the priests received the blood from the hand of the Levites. For a great part of the congregation was not set apart. The Levites were ready to kill the Passover for everyone who could not set apart themselves to Yahuwah. And the greatest part of the people of Ephraim, Manasseh, and Issachar, Zebulun, had not purified themselves, but ate the Passover contrary to the scripture. On this account, also Hezekiah prayed concerning them. So he intercessed. The tube, Yahuwah, be merciful with regard to every heart that sincerely seeks Yahuwah Eluah of their fathers, and is not purified according to the purification of the set apart place. And Yahuwah hearkened to Hezekiah and made whole the people. So again, this is the mercy account I was talking about. So again, and please guys don't take this as a license to eat the first Passover if you're ceremonially unclean. I know some people will do that. Please don't do that.
Don't take advantage of his mercy.
Read the book of Jude, what Jude talks about people that take mercy as license to sin, okay? So 2 Chronicles 35, 1 and 6 to 9, verses 11, 13, and 16 and 19. So what I'll just do, because this is confusing, I'll just do 1 to 9. I don't know why I have it. I don't know why I have it typed out that way. 2 Chronicles 35, 1 to 9. And then we'll do 11 to 19 just to make it more simplified. This is crazy. We're almost done with the Tanakh ones here. So go ahead, Mom. Read 1 to 9, and I'll do 11 to 19.
Josiah celebrated the Pesach to Yahuwah in Jerusalem, and the Pesach lamb was slaughtered on the 14th day of the first month. He appointed the priests to their duties and encouraged them in the service of Yahuwah's temple. He said to the Levites, who instructed all Yashrael and who had been consecrated to Yahuwah, put the sacred ark in the temple that Solomon, son of David, king of Yashrael, built. It is not to be carried about on your shoulders. Now serve Yahuwah your Eluah and his people Yashrael. Prepare yourselves by families in your divisions according to the instructions written by David, king of Yashrael, and by his son Solomon. Stand in the set-apart place with a group of Levites for each subdivision of the families of your fellow Yashraelites. The lay people slaughter the Pesach lambs, consecrate yourself, and prepare the lambs for your fellow Yashraelites, doing what Yahuwah commanded through Moshe. Josiah provided for all the lay people who were there a total of 30,000 lambs and goats for the Pesach offerings, and also 3,000 cattle, all from the king's own possessions. His officials also contributed voluntarily to the people and the priests and Levites, Hilkiah, Zechariah, and Yehiel. The officials in charge of Yahuwah's temple gave the priests 2,600 Passover offerings and 300 cattle. Also, Conaniah, along with Shemaiah and Nethanel, his brothers, and Hashablah, Yael, and Yozabad, the leaders of the Levites, providing 5,000 Pesach offerings and 500 head of cattle for the Levites. Up to 9 or further. I forget.
To 9.
To 9. That's it. Okay.
Yeah. Because I'm going to read 11 to 19. So let me just drop down here. They slew the Passover, and the priests sprinkled the blood from their hand. The Levites flayed the victims, and they prepared the whole burnt offering to give them according to the division of the house of the families, and the sons of the people to offer to Yahuwah, as is written in the book of Moses. Thus did they do till the morning. And they roasted the Passover with fire, according to the ordinance, and they boiled the set apart pieces in copper vessel, cauldron. So you see how we read just earlier in Deuteronomy 16. This is the context of that. So obviously you see it's the sacrifices, not the Passover meal, because it talks about boiled parts of the animal. And after they had prepared for themselves and for the priests in the whole offering, the whole burnt offerings and the fat until night, then the Levites prepared for themselves and for their brothers, the sons of Aaron, and the sons of Asaph, the psalm singers, were at the post, according to the commands of David, and Asaph, and Haman, and Eduthan, the prophets of the king, also the chiefs and the porters of the several gates, to them that sit from the service and the set apart things, and the brothers from the Levites prepared for them. So all the service of Yahuwah was duly ordered and prepared in the day for keeping the Passover offering, the whole burnt. No. On the altar of Yahuwah. No. On the altar of Yahuwah, according to the command of the king. I think Breton did a little boo-boo here. I should say king, not kin. King Josiah. So yeah, a little typo there. Yeah, sometimes you'll see that with the digital versions. They get typos.
Right.
Yeah. So this is all though about the Josiah. Now it's going into the Josiah Passover. And the children of Yashrael were present and kept the Passover at the time, Feast of Unleavened Bread, 7 days, and there was no Passover like it in Yashrael from the days of Samuel the prophet or any king of Yashrael. They kept it, not such a Passover as Josiah's and the kings and the Levites and all Yehuda and Yashrael that were present in Jerusalem, and the dwellers in Jerusalem were kept to Yahuwah. So basically, it was a great Passover.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to switch to the New Testament ones because we got a little bit of time. We can always read this Ezra and Ezekiel one at another time. I want to go to the New Covenant accounts now. So now we're going to actually get into where it's talking about the crucifixion and all that. I'm going to actually start with Matthew 26, 1 to 5. At least get a couple of these before we have to hop off. We could probably continue this tomorrow, honestly.
Yeah, that would be good.
And it came to pass when Yahusha had finished all these sayings, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is portrayed to be crucified." No, I find it interesting. He's calling it the feast of the Passover, like of the night of Passover. That's interesting. Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people into the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Yahusha by subtlety and kill him. They said, "Not on the feast day." So this is how wicked these guys are. They know it's the real Passover. "Not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar among the people." So they know that Yahusha and his disciples kept it the night before. They know that it was the right Passover. So that was Matthew 26, 1 to 5. So that's kind of interesting in my opinion. Let's go to, let me see, Luke 22:1. Luke 22:1. Now the feast of unleavened bread drew near, which is called the Passover. See, this is cultural here. So this is what I was talking about earlier. The post-Babylonian captivity, they started calling the whole week Passover. So don't be confused by that. So this is talking about basically the first day of unleavened bread was coming, is what they're saying. Or, you know what? No, I got to correct myself. They combined the night of Passover with the other 7 days. So it became an 8-day feast, basically. So, no, they are talking about the night of Passover, but they're talking about the whole week. So
Right.
yeah, okay. I need to correct myself there. Yeah. So it gets very confusing with the Jewish tradition of naming the whole week Passover. It gets very confusing
Yeah.
like that. And again, that's all Talmudic. It's not Yahuwah didn't
Yeah.
approve and say, hey, you can call the whole week Passover. He never said that. So that's something that they did at that time that they still do today.
Yeah, they still do it. I never heard of the Feast of Unleavened Bread until I came into Torah. Because all my little Jewish friends used to always talk about Passover at this time of year.
Now, this is interesting. So, this is a little tidbit here. John 11, verse 5, the Yahudim Passover was near at hand. The Yahudim Passover. Notice the distinction. So, possibly this is already after the fact Yahusha and his apostles had the Last Supper. They would have already had it at this point. Because now it's talking about the Passover of the Judeans was near at hand. And many went out of the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. So what you got to understand, guys, is post-Hellenistic period, right? Post, Septuagint time period. After that whole Greek occupation of Egypt, historically these guys started keeping their days at sunrise, starting their days at sunrise. So eventually that confused them on the day of Passover, and by tradition, because they were, pretty much forced in Alexandria, Egypt, to keep their day at sunrise, they switched Abib 14 to 15. And I'll show you proof of this really quick. If I have my Kindle set up yet, let me see if I have my Kindle set up. I can show you in the Targums that even as early as, post Babylon, that they were already doing stuff like this in the what they call the Second Temple time period. Let's see, yeah. So, for example, what? I'm connected to the internet. What are they talking about? Okay, that's strange. Whatever. But anyway, if you have a Targum, sometimes like in the Passover accounts, it will actually call it Nisan 15 instead of Abib 14. So just to give you a little historical proof of them changing it from the 14th to 15th, there's actual historical evidence to that. So anyway, I think the last one we'll do, because it's getting kind of late, is John 12, 1 to 8. And I think that will be it. We'll stop at that for today. And then Yahusha willing, we'll do the rest of these you see up here tomorrow, Yahusha willing. And then we might have time tomorrow also for a second short study, if Yahusha willing. So I'm going to do John 12, 1 to 8 right now, just for time's sake, because I want to get this in before we have to do a closing prayer and get off the record and all that. So let me just see here. So John 12, 1 to 8. Then Yahusha, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, and which he had been dead. Then they made him supper, and Martha served. But Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with him. Then took Mary a pound of ointment, spikenard, very costly, anointed the feet of Yahusha, wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. And said one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, which would betray him, the him referring to Yahusha. Okay, why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? This he said, not caring for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the bag and bared what was put in. Then Yahusha said, let her alone. Against the day of my bearing has she kept this. For the poor always you have with you, but me you have not always. Yeah, good old Judas, being selfish. So, yeah. Anyway, so I think this is a good time to close the study.
Yeah, I think so.
Yahusha willing, like I said, we only have a couple more references, and probably we can fit actually a couple of crucifixion accounts. Yahusha willing tomorrow as part of that study. So hopefully you guys, and especially if there's any Christian viewers still with us, that you're seeing why this is important. If the one thing I'll quote from Paul right here just to end with for you guys is, if you hear his voice, do not harden his hearts. And I'm speaking to Christians out there. he might be calling you, he might be using me and everyone here to call you out of the church, okay, to get his message out there, okay. If the true Almighty Yahuwah Almighty Yahushua the Messiah, the true Son of Yahuwah and the true Almighty, is calling you, do not harden your hearts. Okay, this possibly this possibly might be one of your last chances to be grafted in right now. As we get closer and closer to the end, this might be one of your last chances. So remember, today is the day of salvation. Okay, and again, I know it's hard. You've grown up in a religion that has told you that they are the truth, that you're already in the truth. All I say is seek the scriptures on that matter for yourself. Really, genuinely, I would say seek the Father in prayer. Okay. And yeah, that's it. So Shabbat Shalom to all of our brothers and sisters in Yahuwah and Yahusha. And have a great feast season for all of you out there. I know some of brothers and sisters in Yahuwah and Yahusha have different days and stuff like that for the feast. I just want to say, I hope you guys have a great feast season and Shabbat Shalom. Shag Semak Pesach and Shag Semak Festival of Unleavened Bread. Shalom.